Hello, everybody, and welcome back to OMB Reviews. I am the critic who is a cynic. How is everyone doing this evening? Happy and blessed Monday, and welcome to episode 566 of the Welcome to Asgard podcast, where tonight we're going to continue our conversation about the second weekend numbers for James Gunn's Superman movie and why those international numbers are very problematic for the film. Not only dealing with questions of profitability, not only dealing with questions of perceived success. Again, I guess you could argue that success is in the eye of the beholder. But yes, there are a lot of people saying a lot of things about this Superman box office, and there's just also a lot of just disinformation, half-truths, and just outright spin coming not only from the likes of James Gunn, who, again, you kind of expect, kind of has to. The studio heads and everything, they obviously have to say what they have to say. They have to throw out numbers like, oh, if we get $500 million, we'll be happy. Even though anyone with half a brain can look at that number and figure and realize, oh, wait a minute, if it's only getting $500 million, then that would not be actually a very good thing. Now, this film is set to make a lot more than that, just for the record. And it's interesting that even though I've made it very clear saying, hey, I think this film is going to make quite a bit of money, the issue, though, is when you compare it to your budget, it's not as pretty of a picture. And when you compare it to other films of comparable character, it also doesn't paint a pretty picture either, because Superman has a major flaw and a major problem, and that happens to be a little thing called the international audience, and the international audience just not showing up for this movie. And so we'll talk about that, and we'll also, of course, talk about how this Friday, oh boy, it's finally upon us. We have Fantastic Four First Steps. The early tracking on the movie is set to be similar to that of Superman, of James Gunn's Superman, of course. And so the question is going to be, hey, is it actually going to have a chance to get $125 million, similar to what Superman did? Will it do better? Will it do worse? Or will it be a bit of both? And I think that we probably could suspect that while the domestic total opening might be lower in comparison to Superman, the international could actually end up being that much better and could ultimately lead to Fantastic Four having the same opening weekend, global total opening weekend, as that is Superman. So again, we are still a ways out from that happening. I am not in the game of saying, oh, I think this country's going to do this much and this country's going to do this much. I just look at the numbers as they're reported and tell you what that means as far as the historical narrative is concerned, right? Where it falls in comparisons to other movies, what it likely means as far as total box office in the long run. That's what I do here on the channel. And so, yeah, a lot of new subscribers recently. So again, thank y'all all for finding the channel. The last couple of videos especially have been some of the bigger ones that I've had as of recently. So thank y'all for watching those videos and for keeping the comment section mostly sensible. There's been a lot of nonsense in the comment section, of course, as well, because we all know if you even show just the slightest tint of criticism towards James Gunn, towards the Superman movie, you immediately get labeled all kinds of things. You get thrown into all different groups of people saying all kinds of things about the movie. And it's just ridiculous. I mean, just as it is ridiculous for people to hate this film to such a degree that they will go out and campaign against it, it's also just as cringe and also just as despicable to simp for this movie and defend it when it really has no actual right to deserve that kind of support. Again, you can like the movie, you can support the movie, you can advocate for the movie, but when you go after people for merely criticizing and bringing up legitimate criticisms, or bringing up, hey, here's what the factual data about the box office is actually saying, okay, guess what? I'm going to have some problems with that. But with all that being said, let's go ahead and dive into the chat. And before we do that, smash that like button, light up that fire button over on, actually, no, we're not on that platform anymore. So smash the rumble button as well. And let's just go ahead and say hello to our peeps who are hanging out in the chat tonight. So let me just get my windows all set up so that way they all look good. Let's see, how can I make this window a little bit bigger? Enhance. There we go. That is much, much better. All right, let's get my chat window up here because there were some people here who were here early. We have Brimstone at 439. What's up, Brimstone? Thanks for stopping by early. Keely Chow hanging out in the chat What's going on, Keely Chow? Also saying, hey, yeah, we keep things family friendly here on the channel. And yeah, thank you very much for always asking about the family. So Thor, Freya, baby Sif they're all doing well. Weekend was fun. My brother and his wife came to visit, and so that was a ton of fun. It's been a while since we had some one-on-one time with them. And they are just really fun people to be around. So very happy about that. And yeah, sad that they're gone. But back on it with the week ahead, because we're in the final weeks of summer, unfortunately. I know that some people say, yeah, summer goes through August. It's like, okay, seasonally, maybe. But if you're a teacher, no, summer ends once July ends, because your meetings start up and then school starts up very beginning of August, at least in high schools in the South. We got Snorpoopus Cuber. Hello, humans and other quitters. What's going on, Snorpoopus? Welcome back. He also says hello to me. We got Wendy Hunter. Wendy! What's going on? Wendy also just celebrating 12 months as a member at the Citizen of Asgard level. Wendy Hunter, thank you very much for being a member for 12 months in a row. It's amazing that it's been 12 months. It feels almost like yesterday that you had joined the channel. So thank you for your support. I appreciate that. We got Jimmy A hanging out, also a member here on the channel. The members were here early, so Jimmy A, thanks for being here. Snorpoop is saying, poor puppy doggo, I know how they feel. Yeah, so we have some storms coming through the area. It's very haphazard, so again, nothing too crazy. But we also have had the past few days random power outages. So actually on Friday for Friday Night Tights, at one point in the very beginning of the show, I got kicked out because my power went out for like 2 seconds. And that's more than enough to shut your router down and computer and all that stuff. So yeah, that was fun to deal with. But yeah, that's just what happens sometimes. So anyway, unfortunately my dog River, who's literally at my feet right now because she likes to be kind of in this, she likes to be contained when she's feeling nervous or scared. There's some storms coming through, and it's really just even in the distance. If she hears thunder, that's the main thing. If she hears any thunder at all, she gets very, very scared. We have her on anxiety medication, which again can help at times, but it gets pretty bad actually. So anyway, if there is any thunder in the stream, there's always that chance that the stream could go out at any point, so just be ready for that. But also, if at any point there's a dog climbing into my lap, it's because a thunder happened and she's getting nervous. I'm hoping that as long as I'm speaking, that maybe that can mitigate any of the feelings that she gets from the thunder or anything like that. Let's see, Jimmy A saying, yeah, the weather can get dicey this time of year. Yeah, during the summertime, especially here in Tennessee, we can get these random storms that just pop up. They get really bad for maybe like 2 minutes, and then they just disappear. Yeah, thank you. She's doing okay now. Kimberly G, Killian Shadowcat, what's going on, Kimberly G? Saying, howdy all. We've had wind that sounds like it's ripping my siding off. My dog hates storms too. Poor River. Oh, poor pup. I feel bad for your puppy too. Oh, we support the puppies here on the channel, so sorry to hear that. I hope that your puppy's okay. Forever Sci-Fi, hail to you, Forever Sci-Fi. Thanks for being here. Gary, Banjo Sandwich Worthington, the man with the banjo sandwich himself, saying hello and let's go Krypton green backdrop. It's time after Pentecost. It is the Sundays after Pentecost here on the channel. We know that anyone who's known me for any while knows that I always try to keep my colors following the liturgical calendar, the liturgical year. Since we're in the time after Pentecost, or ordinary time as it's known in the modern calendar, in the church, that's why it's green. As now my dog Willow comes up to me saying, hey, how come I haven't gotten as much attention? I get nervous too. Yeah, but you're braver. You don't get as scared as your sister does. You just get needy. She's literally staring at me like, yes. As my light just dipped. So don't know what that was. Hopefully my dog is not going to unplug anything while she's down there, because that would be awful. Anyway, Justin C. Hope the doggo is hanging in there. If one were to go see Superman premium format, is premium format worth it? AMC Premier member. I mean, if you are an AMC Premier member, isn't that... So Premier is... Because I'm a part of the A-list. That's right, because only A-list members get the free movies. Because I've got to say, if you had the A-list membership, I mean, yeah, it's worth going to see the premium. For Premiere, I don't know what the pricing is on that. I don't know if you get discounts on premium format screens. Personally, I don't think it's worth it. If you're having to pay full ticket price or close to full ticket price, I don't think it's worth it. Opening weekend, the average ticket sold specifically for Superman because of the premium format screens and everything, was about $17. I think is what Valiant Renegade was saying. It's like $16 or $17 was the average, which just actually makes less. That means less people have gone to see this movie than all the other films that we're going to talk about tonight. But yeah, if you're getting a discount, then it might be worth it. And again, only you can decide what is worth it to you. I personally just don't think it's worth full price. Matinee pricing is pushing it too. Again, it's not the worst movie in the world. It's just not something that I think is worth writing home about. I think it's something that honestly you should wait for streaming. VOD if you are really needing to see it as soon as you can. But that's yeah. Because I think it's being vastly... I hear you. I hear you, my child. Sorry, River. Sorry, Willow in this case. My dog Willow, that's Brown. She started crying as soon as I stopped petting her. I'm trying to do something here, okay? I'm trying to highlight these chats. All right, Luke Zilla. Hello to you and everybody here. What's going on, Luke Zilla? Thank you very much for being here. Thanatos Felicitas saying hello, Odin. Hello, Thanatos. Welcome back. The Gary of the Banjo Sandwich Worthington saying here, Fantastic Four could get a 5 out of 10 from critics. You know what that is? That's 50%, Gary. That's a 50% score. I don't think critics are going to give it that. I think critics are going to go gaga for it. Again, just what we typically, the trends that we see from critics, I think the embargo lifts tomorrow, so we'll find out then. But what we've seen from most critics in this regard has been, I think, very inflated scores. I mean, for one, they gave insanely high scores for Superman. And now they're likely to give, I think, also high scores here for this, because they also gave, if memory serves, they gave high scores to Captain America Brave New World, or at the very least much higher than it ever deserved. Thunderbolts, I think, to a certain extent as well. They've always had a Disney bias. Critics have a Disney bias. And it's because Disney is willing to wine and dine whoever they have to create the perception that things are better than what they actually are. That's why most of their movies tend to get certified fresh ratings, even if the films aren't that good. Because, and we all know this, and this was something that I know Gary uncovered a long time ago. Shout out to Gary, Nerddrotic, who listened to a podcast done on, it was like Sci-Fi Network, like it's a sci-fi podcast. And you had reviewers on there, and they were admitting, saying, "Oh yeah, my reviews have been impacted by studios before. Yeah, when studios, wine and dine me and give me free stuff and all this stuff, that absolutely impacts my thoughts on the movie." It's like, okay, you've just admitted to being paid access media, and that's exactly what the Rotten Tomatoes critics are. So that's why Rotten Tomatoes is a terrible metric, and even the audience score is broken because they have done everything they could to stop people from posting onto that platform their honest opinions and their honest thoughts. They make you jump through hoops just to get on there. And because of that, I don't trust high or low audience scores over there, because you could argue review bombing in either direction. That's why for me, at least as of right now, Criticlist is the best place. I'm not sponsored by them in any way. I just love the platform. And mostly it's because it's just regular everyday people watching movies, loving movies and TV shows and talking about them and wanting to have conversations about them. And you just get a much more realistic idea of what most people think, right? Superman still, I think last I checked, had a decent score over there. That's about right. A 5 out of 10-ish. I know Gary's going to get very excited about that. Gary Banjo Sandwich Worthington's going to get very excited about that because it was close to 50%. And yes, I got the joke, Gary. I got it, man. Oh, the Banjo Sandwich. But it is, I think, the best place to go for honest reviews and for honest perspectives on things. It also helps to reiterate, hey, you want to know how I can also know the box office is terrible for a movie? Go to Criticlist, because if no one's posting reviews for it, like I Know What You Did Last Summer and Eddington, guess what? No one's going to see your film, because there's a normie bias on Criticlist. And that's actually a good thing, because it gives us a much better understanding of what's actually going on. Right? That's why when people say, well, you think Superman's not that popular because you're just in your bubble and you're just hearing everything. It's like, well, actually, no, Criticlist is a place where you're finding a lot more people than you would think giving the film very high praise. And so it's actually allowing that discussion to happen. And the fact that the movie has a, 50-ish% decent score, right, in that range, I think speaks volumes to the honesty of the conversations over there, for one, but also to the reality that, you know what? this is actually representing what's going on right now at the box office, because while the domestic box office is doing very, very well for Superman, the international is not doing anything. I mean, it's atrocious. People don't quite realize how important the international box office is to your total box office take. There are people out there. I think it was Fatal J. By the way, I don't know if Fatal J was just trolling on X recently, but he was calling me and people like me grifters for some reason. And that's not really what he has done in the past. Like, I've always liked Fatal J. I had never had any issues with him, but he just randomly called me out the other day. And I'm like, bro, what happened? And then I looked at a video by Demogenai. Shout out to Demogenai. He's, been a long supporter. He's not in the chats as often as he used to be, but he was here at the beginning. And it's always good to talk with him and to meet, at the meetups and stuff. But apparently there's like a bet between him and Fatal J over Superman. It's like 50 push-ups worth. And I think the bet was over whether Superman would make $1 billion or not. Well, let's just say this. Fatal J, you're doing those 50 push-ups. So I don't know if you're going after me because you're mad that you have to do 50 push-ups. But you're going to have to do that because there's no way, mathematically, there's just no possibility for your film to get to that. There's no way for Superman to get to $1 billion at this point. But again, why? It's because even though you can make all the arguments you want about those domestics, the international is just that bad. And we'll show you some comparisons just to give a better understanding about why this is the case. Jeremy Zakowski at 733 saying, evening Odin, everyone on here. It seems that Grace Randolph really wants to get that shill of the year for next Raven Awards. Ooh, why? What film is she shilling for now? She does get nominated almost every year. She usually is in the NPC category, I feel. Gary Banjo Sandwich saying, Pedro will be the king of the reach. Oh, boy. In this new film. I knew exactly what you were going to try to say there. How dare you? Kinkan Rumsky over on Green Machine. What's up, Kinkan Rumsky? How many men cried in Superman? How many women cried? It's a great point to make. I think a lot more men cried in the film than women did. Speaks volumes, I think. Again, Wendy, thank you for being a member for so long. Mr. Roy, hello to you. Hello. What's up, Mr. Roy? Always glad to see you in here as one of my chosen of Valhalla members. We got Michael Burgett. Hey, Odin, are you looking to check out the re-release of Shin Godzilla in theaters next month? If it's at a good time. I'm always open for seeing films like that. The issue for me is even in summertime mode, showtimes are really tough because evening showtimes are usually no good because my son goes to bed around 7 and I'm not really willing to give up that time even just for a day because it's very special. You don't get that time forever. So I'm always very precious with that time as much as I can be. So a 7 p.m. showing is not going to be something that is in most cases realistic. Now, because trailers can be 20 to 30 minutes long, sometimes that can work if it's at the nearby theater. But the one that has the most screens near me is still about a 20-minute drive. So again, if bedtime goes long, that can impact it. I don't want to rush bedtime. So even during the summer, mornings are the best time. But the issue is because the box office is still struggling so much, it's doing better now, but year to year, I think it's still down 9% from last year. This past weekend, at least, was 9%, and that was the weekend Twisters opened. So it's like, whoa, wait a minute. Last weekend was higher than this past weekend, and Twisters was the film that came out. Dang. Again, tells you a lot about the current state of the box office. But because of that, a lot of the theaters near me don't have a lot of those matinee showings, and because they don't have those matinee showings, it makes it very hard for me to be able to actually go to see movies, even over the summertime. So let's just say I've been relying very much on the C's, as it were. Forever Sci-Fi, they started selling school supplies July 5th at the stores. What a way to ruin summer vacation for the kids. And for teachers, Forever Sci-Fi, don't forget. In fact, probably more so for teachers because we are going to be the ones shopping much more than the kids will. Some of them will. Some of them will probably do some grocery shopping for sure. But most of us teachers will be like, oh boy, that's right. Yeah, there were some school supplies on sale even before then. It's bad. Wendy Hunter, time flies, and I'm happy to be able to watch tonight. Hey, I'm happy to have you here. Luke Zilla, Gunn blames anti-American sentiments for international box office. Lilo and Stitch, Minecraft, Jurassic, Mission Impossible 8, How to Train Your Dragon, meanwhile, all doing well internationally. Yep, it's definitely a cope mechanism, and it's arguments that we've heard before from defenders of the movie, right? And when I say defenders of the film, I'm not saying people that are like, advocating for the movie. It's people that are literally defending it from everything. If I point out that it's a tonal mess, They'll label me something and they'll freak out. If I say, yeah, the movie's not making as much money as it should be, they'll say, well, you're just a hater. It's like, no, I'm just pointing out the reality that this film, if it's as successful as you think it is, if it's as good as you think it is in your brain, it would be doing better in these different markets, but it's not. And apparently, yeah, that is something that now even James Gunn is saying. Now, I will say this much, because that'll actually get us started with our first bit of news of the night, which is, of course, going to be continuation of the Superman news. But we'll look at that article as well about what James Gunn said. And I'm going to come to defense of James Gunn a little bit. And again, we're going to have to try to work our way through it. But because there is at some point going to be some equations that we work through and some mathematics that we accomplish here tonight, you are only here tonight, most of you, because you know what time it is.
Time to see a real mathematician at work!
That's right, everybody. It's time for the math. All right, so let's just start off over at the numbers. Let's just look at what the actual box office is right now. So over on thenumbers.com, we had some adjustments from the weekend, which, again, not surprising because that just is what happens. And as you can see, the total box office globally for Superman after 2 weekends is at $408 million. Now, again, overall, is that a good number? Yes. $408 million for any movie would be something that would make most people, most studios, most movies, and those producers behind them pretty happy. $408 million after 2 weeks of the global box office is a good place to be. The issue, though, and the reason why reality has to step back in, is that this is not just your regular, average, everyday movie. This is the start of the DCU. This is a James Gunn movie. This is Superman. This is a film that has existed in a huge franchise of live-action adaptations dating all the way back to, at least in this current iteration, because I would still say the DCEU and DCU are really only separated by, varying slight degrees of separation. And because of that, we're really dealing with, since 2013, box office numbers that really refute much of what is being said when it comes to what the current box office is for this movie, and also what the international box office is overall for these films as well. And so, as that was just mentioned, though, before going further into actual data and math, let's go to what that comment was that I just highlighted. So James Gunn says here he does not get how Superman is being considered woke, and he says the anti-American sentiment around the world isn't helping us at global box office. So here's where I will come to the defense of James Gunn only slightly, right? This is, I think, potentially a case where the headline is trying to frame what James Gunn has said in a certain light. And we all know, right, when it comes down to it, you have interviewers that will just throw these really bad, very pointed, very political questions at actors, at directors, at whoever, because they want to get the soundbite, they want to get that headline that they can run with it, even though the person would not have talked about it otherwise had the person not brought it up in the first place. And so when I see this, the only thing in quotes that I see is that it isn't helping us. So I can almost see the question as like, oh, do you think that Trump is having an impact? Blah, 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 blah. And his instant response is, well, it's not helping us. Right? So it's not really blaming. It's not like he went out of his way to say, Donald Trump is the reason why our film is failing. There is a huge difference between this isn't helping us versus, oh, he is to blame for my movie failing, right? Now, again, that's just my own general sentiment. I like to give you live reactions because it helps keep me honest. It says here, James Gunn said in an interview with Entertainment Weekly that he remains somewhat confused over the conservative backlash that erupted before the release. Fox News and other right-wing outlets branded the movie super woke after Gunn went viral for telling the Times of London that Superman is an immigrant and the story of America. I've heard people say it was woke, and then I've heard a lot of people say it's not. I'm curious as to what in the movie is considered woke, Gunn told Entertainment Weekly amid Superman's box office success. Again, I would put success in quotes. I think people took something I said, the guy for the London paper. Originally, he said Superman comic creators Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster were the sons of immigrants, and they wrote Superman as an immigrant story. And I said, yeah, it's a story about an immigrant. But mostly, it's a story to me about kindness, which it is. That's the center of the movie for me. The problem is that that's not the center of the movie. The center of the movie is you, James Gunn. It is you and your humor. That is the center of the film. Again, just because there are kind moments in a movie does not mean that your statement is automatically true. And some people are just globbing onto every word that he says, every word that James Gunn says, and says, oh, but it is about kindness because of this. Look, there's just one moment where he's really kind. It's like, I'm sorry. That's not the focus of the movie. Because guess what? The focus of the movie is a tonal disaster. It's is it a joke? Is it not a joke? Are we taking this seriously? Are we not taking it seriously? Wait a minute. I don't know how to feel at this moment. Should I care about this character or should I just be waiting for the laugh? That's a problem. If you are not getting your audience to, again, globally here, stick on to what you're saying. It says, that's the thing that we can all act upon is kindness, the director continued. And so what does that lead to? Well, does that lead to the way you vote? Sure. Does that lead to everything? Yeah. Does it lead to how many people are dying from road rage? Yes. All of those things are affected if people just start to value kindness. I mean, people did value kindness in the past. That was an American value, was kindness. It doesn't necessarily seem to be the way to me anymore. So that was always the center of the movie for me, and it wasn't about anything other than that. Well, again, the way you've just worded that makes it sound like, oh, the way it was before. Before who? James Gunn. I mean, people can maybe read into that just a little bit. Even with that being the case, having seen the film myself, I can say the movie is not inherently or even, ostensibly woke. There isn't like a giant woke undercurrent within the film. I think it also depends, like, what do you define as woke? Now, could we say the film is political? I think there's definitely some political things that you could say are in there. There's connections to be made between the modern world and the world of, the world of the movie. I think that the comments that James Gunn just said is, hey, my movie's about kindness, and hey, we used to understand kindness, but now kindness doesn't exist in our world anymore. I think that seems to indicate that maybe he had somebody in mind when he was trying to write his story here. But again, I'm willing to say, hey, these are his comments now. This is not necessarily something that is mentioned in the film. He goes on to say that his brother, but Gunn also had his defenders like his brother, Sean Gunn. So again, that's Sean Gunn, not James Gunn, so I'm not even going to read that. Whatever super woke conservative backlash existed before the film's release, it has done nothing to deter U.S. audiences from showing up in force to movie theaters. Superman is a bona fide box office hit domestically, that should be in quotes, with a strong $235 million after 2 weekends of release. The film's international haul, however, is lagging behind at $171. Still, Superman is at $406 million worldwide so far. And again, that's still not great. We're definitely performing better domestically than we are internationally. But internationally is also rising and having really good weekday numbers in the same way we are. No, that is not true. He says in a separate interview for Rolling Stone. Okay, that's just you trying to spin your movie. And again, I understand that. I have to give respect because, yeah, you don't want to sell your movie. And I get that. Superman is not a known commodity in some places. He is not a big known superhero in some places like Batman is. That affects things. And it affects things that we have a certain amount of So here we go. Okay, here we go. So he adds on, it also affects things that we have a certain amount of anti-American sentiment around the world right now. It isn't really helping us. So I think it's just a matter of letting something grow. But again, for us, everything's been a total win. Having the movie come out and be something that is just embraced by people everywhere, this is just the seed of the tree that Peter and I have been watering for the past 3 years. So to be able to have it start off so positively has been incredibly overwhelming. So again, that to me just comes across as kind of like a nothing burger, right? So in the midst of this entire conversation he's having about how he's so thankful for the movie, he says here, in certain ways, things have a certain amount of anti-American sentiment around the world right now. That's not him going out of his way to say, oh yeah, this is all Donald Trump's fault. Again, I honestly do think that you have to take this thing into perspective. So I'm going to defend him there. I think that they took that one little line there and said, oh, let's just make that the headline because it's going to get a lot of rage clicks. And again, it seems to have worked pretty well. But here's the thing, James Gunn, all right? Even if this is a one-off, even if you are actually, trying to use this as a crutch to defend why your film is doing so poorly internationally, we have some things to talk about, okay? Because if anti-American sentiment is why your film is failing, why is it that so many other films that have come out since the time Trump was president, since the time of now, since the time before he was president to the time of now, explain to me where this anti-American sentiment was for those movies, if that is indeed true, which of course we can use any film from the last few years to say and prove that that is not the case. That is clearly not the case. You can try to say it, you can feel it in your bones, you can feel it in your little heart. It doesn't make it actually true. What is true is when you look at these numbers here, 2 weekends out, and your domestic is at 236 and your international is at 171, there's a good chance that by the end of its run, Superman will have almost twice the amount domestically than internationally. I mean, as of right now, you have a 60+% take from the domestic and less than 40% take from the international. So you have roughly a 60-40 split going on here. And normally when it comes to box office hits, you always have a 60-40 split the other direction, where you get 60% global box office, international box office, and 40% from the domestic. Now, as I mentioned in my box office breakdown, the way that this is good news for the studio is that, hey, you're making more money domestically, you get more return on your investment from your domestic market, right? That's 55% that you get from the domestic versus the 40% you get from the internationals. So that, in that way, that's a good thing. And that's why I do think, hey, guess what? I think Superman is going to make its money back. I do think it is going to be profitable. The problem, though, and the biggest issue that no one can really give a good explanation to is what exactly is the cost for this movie? Because what the cost of this film actually is what ultimately determines how much of a hit or how much of a flop this film is or will be. Because the numbers.com is reporting 225. That's the number that was given to the trades. Remember, we've learned this lesson from Disney. The trades always get numbers from studios that are almost always lowballed, okay? They get these numbers from studios and they're not actually verified and they have to always be taken with a grain of salt. The problem with this one is that we did actually have a public filing in the United States giving us an idea of what this film likely cost to make. People can try to downgrade this. People can try to explain this one away, but no one has given me a reasonable explanation to this point as of yet. So remember this bit of news. Warner Brothers has kept the budget for this film tightly under wraps, as last year a Ohio motion picture tax credit filing listed production cost at around $360 million. And the report here from World of Real does say that's before any rebates. If you're going to say that on their tax form, which I thought was something you can't lie about, by the way. And if you're going to argue, well, it was an estimate. I'm sorry, $360 million and your estimate brings you down to $225? Okay, sounds a bit ridiculous. Even with a tax credit, that's ridiculous, okay? Because if you say $365 and you actually spent $350, okay, that seems like an acceptable amount of separation there. You said it's $365 and it actually cost $380. Okay, guess what? That actually sounds like a reasonable one too. That's a small amount. But if your number that you said that you spent on the film was $365 or $360 and your actual spend was $255 or $300, as some people are saying, I'm sorry. That seems a bit disingenuous to me, right? So here's the issue. Because we really can't know exactly how much was spent on the budget for this movie, and we also know that their marketing budget was insane for the film because they needed this film to be a hit. They needed this film to be a global success, not a domestic success, a global success. It leaves us in this position where we honestly just don't know how poorly or how well this film will be doing in the long run. So all that we can then do is say, all right, since we really can't know with any certainty what the actual raw net profits or net gains or net losses are going to be, what can we actually know? What we can know is comparison game, right? And the comparison game right now does not look good. All right, going back to Man of Steel. So remember how the box office is apparently, internationally, the first argument people make is, well, Superman is an American property and the international market isn't interested in it. Oh, I guess that is weird because yeah, that didn't stop the domestic box office back in 2013 for Man of Steel being $291 and the international actually being higher at $376. Was that just a fluke? That Man of Steel, a Superman movie, the last solo Superman movie that we had, was able to have a higher international total? Oh, okay. I guess that was a fluke. And then some might say, well, anti-American sentiment. Oh, okay. Well, here's the thing. We've had a lot of films come out, times that Trump was in office, times when Trump was out of office. And in almost all of those cases, you know what we had? We had some criticisms of our country abroad, and yet they were still able to sell a lot of tickets. I wonder how that happens. The other good comparison to look at is a film like Guardians of the Galaxy, because some people said, oh, well, Guardians of the Galaxy started off very low, and then it went on to make a lot of money. But you know what Guardians has that Superman doesn't have? International. Guardians of the Galaxy back in 2023 still made $486 million globally. at the international box office, I should say. The Batman from 2022, another film that I think is worth comparing it to, made 400 plus million. You know what film's not going to make 400 plus million globally at the international box office? Is Superman. This movie is continuing to struggle to get anything there. And so none of the excuses, none of the arguments have any weight to them whatsoever. They don't actually stand up to scrutiny. And if you want even further analysis of this, right, when it comes to Guardians of the Galaxy, people saying, oh, well, Volume 3, right, it had good word of mouth and then it legged out. But here's the issue. Go back in time, all right? I keep my charts for a reason. Because even though it's easy to find the domestic week 1, week 2 numbers on thenumbers.com and other places, it's not always as easy to see because sometimes the articles are archived, sometimes they're not. But what the actual global 2-week totals were. So unadjusted for inflation, back in 2023, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 started off at $289 million. Okay, so comparison to $220 million globally by James Gunn's Superman. All right, that's still a pretty good advantage, right? 290-ish globally versus 220. Okay, that's a pretty big advantage. Now look at this one. It jumped all the way up to $528 million by the end of its second weekend globally, did Guardians of the Galaxy, versus $408 million. So now that very small, arguably small, advantage has now grown to a massive $100+ million advantage. Now, Guardians of the Galaxy, it legged out this way. It did well internationally, and that film still just made it to $845 million. So if we're talking about a $100 million difference at this point in time, and it grew from last week, and that separation could continue to grow because guess what? Internationally, you have competition next weekend. Fantastic Four, I don't think is going to do much competition as far as domestic because, again, I don't really buy into the whole, competition bites into your numbers narrative. Because if you want to see a movie, you're going to go see a movie. Doesn't matter if there's multiple films out at the same time. Whichever film you want to see, you're going to see it. If you want to see more than one film, you're going to go see more than one film. Internationally, it might not work in the same way. Right? Internationally, people are a little bit more careful with what they choose. Could be an anti-American sentiment, honestly, because people do hate America. I mean, let's just be honest here. It's not because of our president. It's just because there are people that just don't like us. I mean, there's people that we don't like for various reasons. Again, this happens. This is a natural part of life. People have rivalries. People have, things that they're fans of, things that they're not fans of. But the point of this is that if we're looking here at what's going to be a $100 million plus separation between these two movies, because this international is not going to recover to the level that Guardians did, unadjusted, mind you. You're talking about a movie that's going to, in a best case scenario, make $700 million? And again, that would actually be a good number for that movie. But that also would be right at the cusp of what it would need to be about a break even. And as I mentioned in the box office breakdown this past weekend, $582 million is the low end of what this film will do, with a high end of $800, average $700 million. And if it hits that average, yeah, you're talking about a break even, but that's assuming a $255 million budget. And even then, you're only at $37 million in net profit, net gain. Now, again, that's theatrically. You could easily make some more money back in streaming and 4K sales. We know this thing is going to sell a lot of Blu-rays and 4Ks and stuff because the James Gunn nuts are clearly in love with this movie, right? They love this film. There could be no criticism of this film at all. But as you can see, there's not a lot separating this from being a small success from being a small or even large failure. It really depends, again, going back to it, what did the film actually cost to make? Because whereas many people are willing to accept $225 million as your net budget for your movie, I still have a lot of issues with, sorry, that would mean they lied on their tax form, or you're trying to argue that they got that much money in tax credits and tax rebates, and if that is the case, let me know which state offers that much money in tax credits and tax rebates. I'd love to hear it. Anyway, those are my thoughts. What have you guys to say about that? We'll do our Fantastic Four discussion after I check back in the chat. I need to wet my whistle, though. Whew. That's better. All right, Gary Banjo Sandwich. Galactus is coming, he says. Oh, boy. We're all so scared. Kimberly G. I thought Odin was in The Matrix. Definitely seems that way. We got Bruce hanging out in the chat. What's going on, Bruce? Rob D. Has the internet declared war on you yet over your Superman box office coverage? It is not. Sorry. At first, you're talking about like my internet connection because I feel like my internet connection has had some issues. But yeah, I've had a lot of people go after me for my take. I mean, they were already mad at me enough when I was like, yeah, this film wasn't that good. This film has a lot of, objective flaws to it. It got even worse when I had to say, yeah, the box office really isn't as good as you guys think that it is. This honestly reminds me a lot about the DCEU. I don't really see a lot of separation between these two fan bases. And again, I'm not saying that they're the same people, but I remember when the DCEU got kicked off with Man of Steel. Because guess what? Even though Man of Steel had done infinitely better, right? Is going to have been more people having gone to see that movie than this one. Some people try to bring up the point saying, well, Man of Steel, you would have to say, wasn't as successful either. Well, guess what? I'm not saying that Man of Steel was a huge success. But in comparison, it is a heck of a lot more successful than what's going on right now with James Gunn's Superman. Two things can be true at the same time. I can both hate Man of Steel and I can be critical of James Gunn's Superman, right? James Gunn's Superman can be doing a lot worse than Man of Steel, but Man of Steel itself also could not have been a huge box office winner either, right? It's a non-argument, really. Because they're coming at it from the perception that, oh, I must be a Zack Snyder bro of some kind. It's like, no, I've always been critical of Zack Snyder. Sometimes to my detriment, because, hey, I don't think any of his films have really stood the test of time. That would even go for 300. I know a lot of people like 300. I don't think it's aged very well. I think the effects and the slow-mo especially are not very palatable, at least for me, right? Again, that's just my perception on that. But yeah, it's really crazy. It really is that as soon as I start trying to point out basic figuring here, basic mathematics, it's like, oh, how dare you? Wendy Hunter, I feel each Fantastic Four movie gets worse each remake. That's a great point. We went from Fantastic Four, right, the random ones from the early aughts, right? And then we had Fan Four Stick. All right, J.S. Pena says, ahoy! Ahoy to you. Jimmy A., the best example of critics having a Marvel bias is when Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania got a Rotten Tomatoes score, got a higher score than Infinity War. Or was that just Ant-Man and the Wasp? The first one. Oh, yeah. Brimstone, Odin, what's up? Saying, I was looking at Gunn's latest PR cover. Well, America isn't popular worldwide right now. Yeah. We've talked about that article. Again, I do think that the article is taking some creative license a little bit with that headline, because if you read it in context, it's kind of just a random throwaway line. He is still saying it, though, and so I think it's still worthy of criticism, just maybe not as much as what some people might be running with. We got Laura, the Mother Major General story. What's going on, Laura? Welcome back. Caveat Ties hanging out. Hail. Diet Spam hanging out over on Green Machine. Remember, if you have a comment or question, just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. @Odin lets me know you're trying to get my attention. Also, super chats are more than welcome. More than welcome. Jimmy A., I have a great movie where the men aren't super emotional. It's called The Meg 2. No, Jimmy A., get out of here. Luke Zilla tagged to say, Robert Meyer Burnett also was shouting the 1 billion easily for Superman. Was that before or after the opening weekend? Because, yeah, this is where it was one of those things where there are two different people in this regard. There are some people who like a film so much, they can't see how people don't love it as much as they do. And so because they're so caught up with that, they are just like, no, there's no way this film's not going to make $1 billion because I love this movie and there's other films that I've loved that have made $1 billion. And so it has to then be good enough to make $1 billion. So it's not like they're trying to give any sense of a logical argument. It's more of the emotional argument. So you have some that are coming from the emotional side of it where it's like, but I just like this movie so much, there's no way it couldn't hit this thing. And then there's others who are just ignorant of the box office. You don't have to be the same person there either, right? Because again, some people are just being driven by emotion, and then there's others who are saying, well, yeah, but $400 million, how could it not make $1 billion? Well, there's a lot of ways that it won't make $1 billion, because if you actually look at the history of box office numbers and where most movies end up after they've reached $400 million, as River is now climbing into my lap. So if you see anything shake or move, that is the reason why. It's okay, baby girl. There was a little bit of thunder in the distance, and so she's like, please help me. Please help me. But there's some people that are just ignorant of how the box office works. So they'll hear a number like $400 million after 2 weeks and say, how could it not make it? Well, again, most films, this is where my history and my charting I think is important, because most films fall into this metric, right? Most films, either in a good case scenario, best case scenario, right? And this is a lot of averages too. So it's like the best of the averages, right? Would be doubling its box office after 2 weeks, right? Some films are able to do that. Some films are able to do even better than that, right? For instance, if you look at what's happening right now with the latest Pixar film, Elio has more than doubled its box office, right? That's how bad the start off was, but it's held very well. And so it's been able to do that. So could it happen that Superman could do the same thing? Sure, absolutely. It's possible. But guess what? At doubling your money, doubling your box office, that still only puts it at $800 million. So where do you get that other $200 million? The other thing, too, you have to remember is that typically in those cases, you're talking about a typical domestic international split, meaning a 60-40, 60% international, 40% domestic. Because this is reversed, because this is backwards, the chances of it being able to do something like that, of more than doubling its money, is almost non-existent mathematically speaking. Because it would have to make that much more domestically than your average film and make up for that much less internationally that it's making in as well. Let's see. Michael A. If someone wins an award 3 times, like Shill of the Year, would you name that award after the person going forward? I don't know, man. I don't know. John Campea finally, after every year being nominated, finally won the award itself. So after all those years of being a bridesmaid, never the bride, he finally won this past year at the Ravens. So yeah, I would be open to it, but I kind of like it just being Shill of the Year because it doesn't make it, specific. JS Pena. So is Rebirth going to beat Superman in Fantastic Four? Probably not. Oh, absolutely. It's going to beat. Yes. So here's the thing, guys. Okay. So let's go back to the chart. Cause I just want to be honest with myself. Cause sometimes I forget the numbers, right? But let me pull this back up on the screen so you guys can see what I'm saying. So JS Pena asked the question about, is Jurassic World Rebirth going to make more money than Superman and Fantastic Four? So first off, Fantastic Four is not out yet, so we don't know what those numbers are going to be like, okay? We can look into that in a second, and then I'll jump back into the chat, right? But just to kind of set the stage, if you look at the numbers here, and I might have to enhance this a little bit. Let's see. Let me do the control enhance. There it is. So look at where Jurassic World Rebirth was by the end of its second weekend. It was at $529 million globally. That was after opening to $322 million globally. So it opened $100 million higher than Superman. And by the end of its second weekend, it was still over $100 million separation. This is because not only did it hold better domestically than anyone thought, internationally, it's where Rebirth is really doing well. In fact, in its opening weekend, there were some markets, opening weekend of Superman, some internationals where Rebirth had a higher second weekend, third weekend number than Superman did in its opening weekend. So that just shows you the strength that Rebirth has globally, but it also is holding well. It's getting in the 40s still for as far as drop-offs at the domestic market too. So it's doing well in both markets. I don't know why, because guess what? This movie's not that great either. In fact, I would say Rebirth is significantly worse than Superman. But because of its point of getting there, $1 billion was theoretically on the table, mathematically speaking. And most likely it's going to fall $800, $900 million because of where it's tracking, right? At 529 after 2 weeks. Now in its third week of release, it's jumped up to $649 million. So that's the thing, right? People need to kind of put these things into perspective as far as where they are. Like, let me just, again, double check that. Let's put the numbers.com up, right? Because Jurassic World Rebirth is 3 weeks out. So it's jumped up quite a bit, right? So it went from opening up to 300 plus to 529. And then it added just in the past week, another $120 million or so to its box office. So if it's adding $100 million roughly every week, so we'll see what happens with Fantastic Four, right? Because that's going to be the first real competition internationally, since Superman really isn't putting much of a fight internationally at this point. We'll see if it's able to hold up against Fantastic Four behind the Disney MCU machine. But this is why, like by next weekend, $700 plus million is easily on the table. And then from that point, it's going to start to slow. And so then it's like, okay, maybe it gets to the high 700s, low 800s. Then it gets maybe to the mid 800s, to high 800s. So that's why $1 billion is theoretically still on the table, but much more likely $800 to $900 million is still a much more likely scenario. And again, because of how much less it is compared to the last Jurassic World, that's why I don't think $1 billion is going to happen, because it's still tracking behind where the previous Jurassic World movie was, right? So anyway, let's just quickly go through the Fantastic Four box office, and then we can jump into the rest of the comment section. All right, so our box office from Tony, good old Tony at Deadline. Don't you just love Tony? Such a fair guy. So anyway, summer box office opening forecast for Fantastic Four. It goes on to say here, U.S. Canada summer box office still has a shot at hitting $4 billion per ComScore, which would be the second time post-pandemic to cross that benchmark. And here's how it's expected to go down. Keep in mind, what he's just said there is, it'll be the second time since after the pandemic, but this is still not anywhere close to what it was before the pandemic, and also not anywhere close to what it was in the previous year. Anyway, Disney is expected to ring in the last $100 million opening of the season from the first weekend of May through Labor Day, with Marvel Studios' Fantastic Four First Steps tracking between $100 and $110 million. I kept hearing, Disney is nervous, but the stats look good. With $13 million in pre-sales as of Monday, again, pre-sales don't mean much, Tony. It's your walk-up traffic that makes the difference. Pre-sales can tell you certain things, but in the world of today, the market of today, this is not everything. This is why y'all's tracking has been off by so much in the past, because y'all put way too much weight in pre-sales. Fantastic Four, he says, is pacing ahead of pre-sales for Thunderbolts, Brave New World, and is 20% behind Superman. So that's the interesting part there, right? Is, wait a minute, you're saying about how it's tracking ahead of Thunderbolts and ahead of Brave New World and what those movies made, but that it's behind Superman by 20%, but then the number you're giving is not about 20%. Again, this is the reason why his numbers don't work out the way that he wants them to. But he's saying 100 plus million, right? 100 to 110 million dollars. Now, Sean Robbins at Box Office Theory, it's still been a few days. It's been about 4 days since the last time this was updated, but he still had this at 125 to 145. So he's still a bit bullish here, right? He thinks that the opening is going to be as good or even better than Superman. Here's the issue, though, with Box Office Theory's chart. The same methodology he's using here is the same methodology he was using for Superman. And remember that for Superman, he had the high end at 180 million or so for that film. And the movie ended up making a lot less, right? His final forecasting was around 130 plus million. It made 125, which again was good compared to what Tony at Deadline had projected, but was still a lot less than what Sean Robbins' Box Office Theory method worked out, right? Usually Box Office Theory's method is good. The issue with these two movies especially is that pre-sales have been so crazy, so wacky, right? The studios put so much emphasis on those pre-sales to the point where people went to the site, Fandango and others, I think it was mostly Fandango though, and overloaded their servers because their servers are not used to people buying tickets in general because no one's really going to the movies anymore, that their site crashed and they had issues. So it creates the perception that something is doing better or is as successful as someone or something else. That's not really, I think, something that we can really hold on to with any sense of certainty. And so if I had to make my guesstimates, I would say I would not be surprised to see the film open up closer to what Tony's numbers are, but maybe a little bit higher, right? 110 to 115 sounds about right to me, because even though I have no interest in the film, and even though most of us are so just done with the MCU in general and are done with Pedro Pascal, right? Pedro Pascal, fatigue is real. I think what we can all maybe agree on is this. There are still a lot of normies in the world that will go and buy these tickets, that will go and watch these movies. There are people that are fans of Pedro Pascal. None of them went to go see him in Eddington, but I mean, Eddington is an A24 independent movie. And so even then, it's like, that doesn't really make sense either, right? There's no such thing as a actor's fatigue if they're not in the right kind of movie, right? If there's an actual, movie, if there's an actual star that people could point to say, every movie that he or she makes always makes X amount of money, I would love to know it, because even if you bring up the best example of box office success, which is Tom Cruise, he still in the last decade plus has had a terrible movie that was a bomb at the box office. Right? The Mummy, people often forget. The whole Dark Universe was scrapped literally because of how poorly that film did. He couldn't drive out a lot of people to that. Now you could say, oh, it did so much better than it would have done because of him being in the movie. That might be the case. But just because someone is in a movie does not mean people will or will not go to see it. All right? It doesn't have as much of an impact as people might think that it does. So with that being said, again, we're talking here about a situation where I do think this will probably come in domestically underneath where Superman started. So 110, 115. However, where I think this film will probably end up doing much better, and don't be surprised if Deadline comes out with an article tomorrow or Wednesday, maybe we'll be able to cover it if it does come out by Wednesday for our morning show, that the global forecasting comes out and it's well over $200 million, like $250-ish million globally. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but it just would not surprise me, right? With a much smaller cut coming from the domestic market and a much larger cut, right? I think we'll likely see, if I had to guess, I think Superman's going to lose international opening comparison, right? So the $95 million of Superman in its opening weekend internationally, I think is going to be much smaller than whatever Fantastic Four's international opening is. I think it's north of $100 million for Fantastic Four, if I had to guess. And again, that's just because of the Disney machine and everything else, right? And also because of how poorly Superman really was at the box office. So I could see it doing north of $100 million there. Domestically, I think Superman takes the edge there. Now, long run, if it was up to me, we don't know exactly what Fantastic Four is yet. We don't have any idea of whether the film is good or not. And again, I think most people are so apathetic towards it at this point that it's just that sentiment's gonna hurt the box office well enough. But I do think if I had to say which film is gonna actually, win the summer battle, I think as of right now, Rebirth is going to easily win the battle. I think Jurassic World Rebirth is going to end $800 to $900 million. I think James Gunn's Superman is going to end between $600 and $700 million, with a best case scenario, I think, of $750 in a realistic take, right? But $600-700 million. And then I think Fantastic Four, again, long term makes the least, with maybe $500 to $600 million globally. And again, a lot of things need to happen still. It's still way too early to predict, but I would say that's the most likely case. Now, if the internationals show up to a very big reception for Fantastic Four, and then the domestics come in at least a fair rate, maybe that ranking changes, but I don't think anything is going to take Rebirth off this summer. I think Jurassic World Rebirth just has too much of an advantage, and yeah, I just don't think there's anything left to come out that can really put up a fight against it, at least summertime. Again, there's plenty of other films coming out over the course of the year that might be able to put up a fight. Zootopia 2 is a sleeper hit, I think, because people forget how big Zootopia was when it first came out. All right. Wendy Hunter. Oh, math. Yes, indeed. No ice cream. Justin C. All right, so 751 in the chat. It's 827 in real life. So I'm about as far behind as I typically am. All right. Justin C. Premiere has waived online ticket fees. Otherwise, it's regular price, $23. Discount Wednesdays is $14, though. I don't think it's worth either of those. I'm going to be honest. But that's just my thought. Jeremy Zakowski, she's talking Superman box office and not adjusting for inflation. Also, speaking about Shin Godzilla, there are strong possibilities that Toho has greenlit that for a sequel. Ooh, I mean, they can do a sequel because of how that movie ends, but I don't know if I want it to. I kind of like the way it ends. It leaves you in suspense. All right, Luke Zilla is going to add more context to the Grace Randolph thing. She said in her box office coverage video that what is the point of rebooting and all this drama if this new Superman can't even beat Man of Steel, $670 million worldwide? Wait, Grace Randolph said that? Okay, that makes her a little based, actually. No, I think that's a fair point. Right? What is the point of rebooting your franchise if you can't even beat the unadjusted numbers of the old movie? That's what I would be saying, actually. That's actually what I am saying. Because that's the issue, right? Even if you look at the unadjusted global numbers for Man of Steel or any of the other films I mentioned before, there's a strong chance this Superman film does not reach those numbers, even unadjusted. So that's giving it a huge handicap, right, in comparisons. but it gives you a good idea about just how bad these international numbers are for Superman. Caveat ties. Mainstream headline. Gunn didn't not say that it was all Trump's fault. Oh, man. Markless Earth, what's going on? Markless Earth, what's up, man? Welcome. It's about 50-50, I think. 650, if it goes above 650 Superman, yeah. Because again, my chart, I didn't take that off. Sorry. You know, my chart looks at historical averages, right? So most films tend to make either 70% of their entire box office in their first 2 weeks or 50% in a good case scenario, right? And sometimes they can do even better than that, right? On average, it's between 70 and 50% that they make in their first 2 weeks globally. So my range for the movie is 582 globally to 816 globally. Average would be 700 million then. So yeah, I think there's a decent chance that could happen. But that's, again, assuming an average run, both domestically and internationally. So the question is going to be is how much better domestically does it do to compensate for how poorly internationally it does? Does it even out? Does the domestic exceed expectations and lift up the international with it? We don't know that yet. We really just don't know that yet. But yeah, as a comparison, some other films from this year. So, for instance, Thunderbolts ended its run with the first 2 weeks accounting for 70%. Remember how Thunderbolts had good word of mouth? And guess what? Even with that good word of mouth, it still ended up on the low, like on a bad end. Like, so that is, as I said, most films on average end in that 50 to 70% territory of their first 2 weeks compared to their total. Thunderbolts is at 71% in that comparison. So not very good. Let me see something else to give some perspective here. Some of these films are not loading for some reason, so it's hard to bring them up. Moana 2 ended at 56.6%. So again, about an average run there. So about what expectations are. Gladiator 2 ended at 69.24%. So again, on average. So most films, again, fall within that average. There's, again, films that do better. Usually it's like the smaller independent films that can usually chart break. So for instance, there was a film that came out this year, One of Them Days, because everyone saw that, right? 48% is the first 2 weeks comparison, right? Legs of 3.65 times its opening weekend. So, you know, gives you a perspective there, right? So again, most films make 3 times their box office globally by the end of their run. Right now, James Gunn's Superman is at 1.86 times its opening weekend. So we'll have to wait and see. Jurassic World Rebirth is currently at 81%, 2 times its. So yeah, there's a good chance for it to do 2.5 to 3 times its opening weekend is Jurassic World Rebirth, at least worldwide. 28 years later is at 70%. F1 is at 63%. So that's still having an average run. So even though it has good word of mouth, it's still just looking to have like an average run at the theater. Again, it's always that I always get fascinated by those comparisons. All right, let's see. Wendy Hunter. Wendy, how do you explain everything is one of the reasons I enjoy watching? Well, thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. I feel like sometimes my explanations can get a little wonky, but I do appreciate that. Thank you. Let's see. Xavier Pierce, welcome. The Geek Archivist. Again, if you have a comment or question that you want me to read, just put @Odin at the very beginning of your comment. And if not that, you can, of course, super chat or donate and get your comments read much faster. And support the channel. The Rogue Attraction. What's up, man? How's it going? H. Dizzle. All these glorious words. Dude, H. Dizzle. I told you, I can talk, man. When I'm given the chance, I can talk. Salty Saturdays, I can talk in a group. Because my man Matthew Kadish gives me the chance and asks me for my thoughts and throws it over to me in a very good way. It's amazing. I speak more on one individual stream than in my entire history of FNT. I can definitely say that for sure. But I think most of us could say that. Shorty Short at around 8 p.m. said, I think Gunn means that Superman is seen as a very American hero. Yeah, and again, that very well could be what he's trying to say. The issue that James Gunn has is that he's not very good at putting his words into practice or in explaining his words. Right? When it comes to his interpretation of things, it tends to cause issues. That's why the film has issues. MTax Shark, who's a member. James Gunn is a film person. He should know the importance of the right words, language in a given circumstance. When he misspeaks, that's on him. Agreed. But I also will say, when the media puts you in a situation and you give a decent response, but they still spin it, again, we do have to blame the media there too. And I think that the biggest issue is that we know James Gunn and we know what he thinks politically. All right. I don't think he's made any of this secret. And Hollywood in general don't make their thoughts very secretive here. So for him to say that is actually pretty tame, if you're going to be honest. Like, it's like, he's like probably wanting to say all the worst things possible, but he's not, because he wants people to see his movie. And right now they are domestically. So Rob D says, yes, it's all Trump and anti-American rhetoric. That's why 2019 had 7 American films hit $1 billion at the box office, largely due to international markets. Yeah, sure. Yeah, again, it's ridiculous. And again, some would say, well, there weren't tariffs back then. It's like, yeah, but there are, again, movies since Trump has taken office that have done better. So it still destroys the entire argument. Rob D, correction, 9 films hit $1 billion in 2019. There you go. Creative accounting, Odin, says General Wingster, of course. Jimmy A. Twisters was another movie that performed much better domestic, and it also co-starred David Cornsweet. Maybe they just don't like this guy overseas. Another thing, if you actually watch interviews with the guy, he's a very likable person. Like, anytime I see him do interviews or anything, all I can think is, why are they letting James Gunn talk at all? If they were smart, James Gunn would have made the film, shut up, stayed in the background, and let Dave Cornsweet do all the interviews. Because he's been killing it. And I'm sure someone could find maybe something he said that wasn't good, but everything that I've seen, it's been like, dang, dude, you're a great advocate. Because he's just a likable person. Jimmy A. At this point, Spider-Man and Batman are the only superheroes that can sell tickets on name alone. You would think, but here's the issue, okay? Because even though the Batman is a much better box office performer than Superman, right? And the comparisons between them, it's night and day. The Batman was not a huge box office success, man. Again, people forget this, all right? Because I was harsh on the Batman. So even though the Batman is significantly more successful as far as actual just raw numbers versus Superman, in that comparison, yes, individually, when that film first came out, that film should have made a lot more money than it ended up doing. Let me see if I can find that in my chart. Oh yeah, so that film had an average run, right? For all the positive praise that it got, it did again, it did good, right? 3.8 was its multiplier, right? Times the budget. And then it did 61% first 2 weeks versus its total. In the tracking for it, it made $769 million before adjusting for inflation. The numbers has that at 772, so that's just about the same that was there. And let me look at those numbers again. So that film, the Batman opened to $248 million at the global box office. Sorry, again, $248 million. That was some of the things that people were saying was like, well, 248, that's not that much different from 220. And then Superman has gotten to 408, whereas that film got to 465. So that's where it starts to pull away a little bit. And so those internationals are going to be, again, the Achilles heel of Superman. So though Batman was able to get to $700+ million, based off of the current trends, it's not looking like Superman's going to do the same because of those international numbers. But even then, right, that film had a range of 665 to 931. An average run would have been $800 million. And it did less than that. So it did not do nearly as well as it should have done. And that film's budget was estimated to, at that time, be around $200 million. And so, again, it made its money back and it made profit, but it could have been a lot more profitable. That's why I do it live. Keeps me honest. Because I actually thought it was worse than that, but it wasn't. Kagan Remsky, that's the stuff. Jenna Wingster, I actually don't care anymore. No more superhero movies for me. They're just tiring. I'm going back to Westerns. Good on you, man. Jenna Wingster, Odin is a Snyder, bro? Yeah, anyone who knows me knows how much of a joke that is. Steven, great to see you again. What's up, man? Been a while. But honestly, are you surprised international number of Superman is lower than expected? I'm not, because I don't think the film was that good. I don't think it has to do with anti-American sentiment or international audiences not liking Superman, because, again, you put up Man of Steel against the movie and you realize, oh, that's just complete crap. Because Man of Steel did a lot better. Jenna Wingster says, also, rip Michael Madsen. I've been rewatching his interrogation scene in Reservoir Dogs as tribute. Yes. Absolutely. May perpetual light shine upon him. I don't want to say that, Mark, because yes, her birthday was in 2016. So she's turning 9 this year. But I don't want to think about that. KK and Rumsky, in Meg 2, the women cry with delight. Oh, boy. Steven, what are your thoughts on the Odyssey tickets already on sale when it's out next year? Again, as impressive as it is, I don't get it. Because, I'm sorry, I rarely know what I'm doing a week in advance, let alone a year in advance. So I think it's silly people are buying tickets out a year. A lot of things can happen in a year, guys. A lot of things. And based on the fact that there are so many scalpers selling these tickets for like hundreds of dollars, I think as much as there are real people buying these tickets, I think there's also a large portion that are buying these to try to sell them for profits. So, Steven, so Supergirl promo image is out already. Honestly, the movie is going to be a flop if Superman can't. Yeah, if this is where Superman is performing, I don't think Supergirl has much of a chance, because I don't think it's going to be as well received as Superman is domestically. And if it has the same, if not worse, international struggles, which I don't see why it wouldn't based off of the current metrics, unless it's a much better film. Again, if it's a better film, then that could easily do it. They are in a lot of trouble. And that's the reason why, right? The reason why the box office is so important, the reason why we bring up things like $1 billion or $900 million, like why this film needs to be a huge hit, why it needs to be a huge global success, is because this is setting the stage for everything else. So, and I think it was, I don't know if it was, Ryan, RK Outpost on Geeks and Gamers Daily or on his channel, but I know at some point it's been mentioned, like, if you look at what is going to happen from this point forward, what's your next project? What's the next thing that people have to look forward to? Well, first, Superman's appealing to a lot of families and to a lot of kids. But your next project is Peacemaker, which is for adults. And he's trying to push to say, oh yeah, they're directly tied into each other. This Superman directly leads into Peacemaker. So guess what? All those kids that you had aren't going to be able to watch the show because it's for adults. So they're going that direction. And then after that, it's what? Supergirl, or is it Clayface? Clayface is supposedly going to be like a horror film, so that's not going to be for the kids. Supergirl might be an edgier film, and so therefore, I mean, if she's just a person that likes to go to the red sun planets so that she can get drunk, okay, yeah, that's what I want my kids to watch. Like, again, none of it makes any sense. And so all of this film had going for it, or could have had going for it, was if this film had an amazing box office run, man, it set the stage for it. It doesn't matter if they poo-poo the run. I mean, it does, because even if it had $1 billion run and your next thing is Peacemaker, which, again, first season's not that great, guys. I'm sorry. Another thing that's overrated vastly. The bigger issue is that you're cutting out a huge portion of why this movie is being successful in the first place. So there's nothing to keep the momentum going for this going forward. So, I mean, yeah, James Gunn was supposed to bring clarity to this, right? The DCEU had gotten so mushy, so messed up, so confusing. And ever since James Gunn has taken over, it's just gotten more confusing. Oh, there's Elseworlds, and there's the Batman in his own separate universe, and then Joker's over here in his own separate universe, and then there's my Superman, but he's tied together with these previous things that were a part of the DCEU, but I'm going to allow them to be a part of the DCU. Oh my goodness. But yeah, you look at where it is now, you're like, okay, this film could have set the stage, but it's not. And it's even worse when you think about what's next and what is the actual pathway and game plan going forward. It's not looking good. Steven, what are your thoughts on Zelda and Link casting? Honestly, it's a relief that there's no T debate anymore. Agreed. Anyone who was trying to push that, it was like Brianna Wu, I think. I'm sorry. You're an insane person. You have mental illness, Brianna. You need help. Get help, please. Because trying to argue that, Princess Zelda should be T because it's a weird and wacky universe already. So why not? I'm sorry. That's ridiculous and that's insane. Yes, very happy with the casting. The girl they cast looks like, looks like a good casting. The guy that they cast to be Link, again, looks like the cast. They seem to work. Hopefully they can act. That's the bigger issue for me. If you can't act, then it doesn't matter how close to the part that you look. Just ask a certain actress who was cast to play Belle simply because people thought, she actually looks like she could probably be Belle in Beauty and the Beast. And then she couldn't sing or act the part. Emma Watson, everybody. Justin C. AMC is showing My Neighbor Totoro as a part of the Studio Ghibli Fest 2025. Have never seen it, though. Heard it. Good thing. Dude, Justin C., go see it. I didn't realize that was coming out again this year because Studio Ghibli Fest, it's every year that they do this now, which I love because I love Studio Ghibli movies. I might need to see if there's a morning show because my son loves that. And that, to me, actually might be worth having that be his first theatrical experience. What day is that coming out, Justin C.? Let me know. Steven, so Campy is now saying that Superman doesn't need to break even. It just needs to win fans over to like it. What? He is saying a good example is Batman Begins. No, I don't agree. First off, the fact that you start off with "so Campia said" automatically makes me realize, what stupid thing did John Campia say this time? Right? He won our shill of the year for a reason. He won our shill of the year for a reason, guys. It's not because he has good takes on things. John Campia. No, it does need to break even. It needs to make profit. One, because a studio needs money. You can't make your future projects unless you've got the money to do it. So yeah, breaking even's pretty damn important, okay? Pretty dang important, I would say. And his example is Batman Begins. I'm sorry. But how does that make any sense at all? Let me go ahead and let me see. Maybe he's got something. Maybe he's got a point. Let me try to pull up Batman Begins and see if this makes any sense at all. Let's see. So Batman Begins, it had a $150 million budget and it ended up making up $356 million globally. Now, again, that was back in 2005. Markets are quite different from that point. Let me adjust for inflation and see what this would be in today's dollars. So in today's value, that budget would be $264 million, but it would have made $629 million globally. So I think the comparison he's trying to make is that Batman Begins also had a stronger domestic than international. This, to me, honestly, is someone who's reaching. They're trying to find, I bet what he did was he went on thenumbers.com and said, I need to look at every single DC movie ever and see if there's any film at all, that could possibly be a comparison. And then he happened to find one that actually worked. Because also, here's the thing. If Batman Begins had come out today, wouldn't even be close. Because Christopher Nolan and his brand have grown significantly since that time. That's why it's not a good comparison, because James Gunn is already established. Guardians of the Galaxy, that's what he has been chasing now for years. Whereas Christopher Nolan, most people who are Nolan diehard fans were already fans of his beforehand, but that's when mainstream audiences were finally introduced to him. People know James Gunn already. People know his shtick already. So that's the thing, is he can try to say this because, the films happen to be similar in this one respect of having a stronger domestic versus international. The issue is that 2005 is also when international was not nearly as significant as it is today. And secondly, because that was a time when people were just coming to know who Christopher Nolan was at a global level, which is not the same case with James Gunn, who is an already known entity. So, okay, I see where he's trying to make the argument, but it does not work at all. General Wingster, my mom randomly asked if I wanted to go see Rebirth. I said, haha, no. Good. Luke Zilla. Jurassic World Rebirth in its third weekend made $41 million internationally, $4 million less than Superman second weekend international. Whoo boy. Yep. And that is the issue, isn't it? Because Jurassic World is 1 week out extra versus Superman. Steven, all the questions tonight. Lilo and Stitch finally broke over $1 billion. Yep. Will there be more? What do you mean, like more live action adaptations? Oh, absolutely. That's going to be the whole Disney catalog going forward, because those are the only films that they can seem to make any money. And had Lilo and Stitch actually been a good adaptation, it could have made more. It shows you the power of nostalgia. But guess what? It's going to run into the same issue that the MCU is running into. Eventually, people are going to start to get tired if they continue to be mediocre. Because it's not necessarily superhero fatigue or Marvel fatigue. It's bad movie fatigue. And when you're putting out consistently bad or mediocre movies, eventually it becomes so tired, people give up on it. Let's see. Hardwick. The biggest wasted potential in Superman is that James Gunn gave David Cornsweet bad direction. Cornsweet has much more range than Henry Cavill, but Gunn didn't use it correctly. Oh, no, I think absolutely Hardwick blame, and that's, I've been saying this from the beginning, right? The bad part of this movie is James Gunn, because he put himself into the movie. And because he is the focal point, I mean, look at the marketing, look at the interviews. More attention is given to James Gunn than to Dave Cornsweet, and that's a problem. When the director is taking on more focus than your main actor, lead actor, that should spell you the problem very clearly. Steven, you still have a long summer vacation still, or is it already coming to an end? Yeah, only in the last couple weeks. Morning stream will be, we'll do one this Wednesday, and I think we'll be able to do one next Wednesday as well, because I thought this was my last week of summer, but because of how August starts on a Friday this year, I think technically because of that, I'll have next week, most of next week off. I don't know when meetings start up yet, though. Will Riker, hail to you. Let's see. Hardwick, who is a member. As much as I dislike Snyder's version of Superman, I think Man of Steel is technically a better made movie than Gunn's Superman by virtue of taking time to develop the story characters. Yeah, I mean, that's going to be an agree to disagree point there. There's a lot to be critical of when it comes to that movie, story-wise too, because here's the thing. Zack Snyder is not a good writer. So there's a lot of character issues with that movie too. That's a movie where from the very beginning we were like, the only good things really are probably because of Nolan's involvement, and that's it. Jimmy A, it is worth noting James Gunn does not like Grace Randolph and has called her out on Twitter. Hey, definitely seems to be a reason why she would be biased against it. But even biased people can still be right on occasion. Hardwick, it has been rumored that Gunn modeled Cat Grant in Superman after Grace Randolph. Myra Forget, I know it was reported in Bloomberg from Toho that Godzilla -1 sequel is in the works too, possibly releasing next year. I heard that too. That's exciting. That I am actually very excited for. I don't know what they're going to do with it, because the way the director described it, it sounded like they weren't necessarily going to pick up from where the last one left off. I don't know. Arnold, hey buddy, glad to make it to your stream. What did you think of Mortal Kombat 2 trailer? I mean, I appreciate its campiness, but it's still a sequel to a terrible Mortal Kombat movie. I don't care what anyone says. The Mortal Kombat movie that came out a few years ago now, was not good. It was bad, guys. So I'm excited for Johnny Cage. That stuff was funny. I get it. But it's still a sequel to that bad movie. And so until the movie itself actually comes out, Sahil99 saying, I discovered you and the rest of the gang of the 199 back in 2020. And since then, I watch more YouTube and less any and all streaming services combined. Did 2020 change drastically for YouTubers? It's hard to say. It's crazy that I've been streaming since 2018. I can't believe that I've been on YouTube that long. It's like, it was crazy enough that I've been on for 5 years. But the fact that we're now getting to the point where, yeah, it's not too far, we're not too far removed from it being 7 or 8 years. And then after that, a decade. What? That's crazy. I can't believe it, guys. Cannot believe it. All right, let's see. Justin C. says here, we'll start to wrap things up. Yeah, Batman. So here's the thing, H. Dizzle. The Batman starts off with, ooh, this looks really cool. And then as it goes on, you're like, okay, not as good as the beginning. And then you get to the third act and you're like, what the hell am I watching? And you all know what I'm going to say. Laura especially. You know what I'm going to say. That one moment that for me, it's like, nope, I'm done. Hey, guys. As soon as the Riddler says those famous words, hey guys, so thanks for watching my channel. As soon as he does that, the movie's on. The movie's over. The movie's donezo. All right? My interest in the film was like, meow, that's stupid. You took the one interesting character. You took the villain that Paul freaking Dano was doing such a great job of creating this, you know, very weird personality with, and you destroyed it. You turned him into a right-wing online influencer incel, and I'm getting mad just thinking about it. Hey, guys. Joe Wingster, the biggest contribution the Batman made was Paul freaking Dano's hey, guys, and that's good enough for me. Boom, there it is. And that's good enough for me. King and Rumsky, have you ever seen Pete Holmes do Batman? Oh, doesn't he do like the dumb Batman? Hey, what's going on here? Yes, I've seen those. Those are funny. And that's why Batman, The Dark Knight Rises. Oh my God. I can't believe Jeremy defends The Dark Knight Rises. And it's so funny. On FNT, we found out he saw The Dark Knight Rises one more time than The Dark Knight because he wanted to beat a personal record, even though that third movie, Dark Knight Rises, is infinitely worse than Dark Knight, right? Dark Knight is one of the best films ever. And then you have Dark Knight Rises, which is in many ways trash. And one of the things that I laughed out loud at was when Christian Bale's Batman does the, oh, so that's what that feels like. He said it in such a way that was so similar to Pete Holmes. I was like, okay, so he's just become a caricature. Funny. Hardwick, how well do you think audiences will react to a movie about an alcoholic Supergirl? Not well. The Morak, if they're selling tickets for 2026 movies already, sign me up for Project Hail Mary. It could be interesting. Myra Baguette, okay, here it is. Lanterns is after Peacemaker, but I don't think it's going to be a family-oriented... Yeah, that's the thing, right? Lanterns is going to be an interesting one because you're dealing with a lot of different Green Lanterns there. And yeah, is it going to be for kids or is it going to be for adults? Lukezilla, that Supergirl poster looks like a Shazam ripoff. Hard pass. Ooh. Bruce, I tried to watch Peacemaker. I didn't make it through the first episode. I don't blame you. Robbie, they're going to reboot V for Vendetta next and present that to the kids. No. Joe Wingster, they should have done just a clean sweep after 5 years. Time skip for DC. Then I was Felicia Das. The Superman marketing actually made me not want to go see the movie. I found Gunn irritating. He made himself quite the focal point, didn't he? El Santo? Since other Superman films' international box office returns haven't been so bad in the past, it's hard to deny an anti-American, or rather anti-tariff sentiment with such an American icon. Yep. Again, if that is the case, then why haven't we seen it with other movies? Jonah Wingster, it's weird that they're doing live action for Zelda. Why didn't they just do another animated film? I agree. I like the casting, but my ideal would be an animated movie versus live action because it's just going to be a lot of CG. Now, because this might, if they get the right director, if they get the right production company behind it, it could be good. Who knows? Casting for live action Disney princess movies would have probably worked out better if they had just cast Lily James in all of them, just with different hair color each time. I mean, yeah, because Lily James, that was woman who played Cinderella, right? That's still one of the best live action adaptations that they've done. Now forget, Totoro has been out the last couple days. It's got 2 more days for this run, tomorrow, Wednesday. Oh well, we're not going to be able to make that one, sadly. It then goes on to say, Cambia's argument was that Batman Begins had to overcome Batman and Robin and starting over the Batman universe. No, it had to come over. People don't really know at a global level who Christopher Nolan is, and that Batman can be a super serious film. So, I mean, again, there's a point to be made about Batman and Robin and that stuff, but again, the comparison falls apart when you think about Christopher Nolan before the world really knows about him, and before keep in mind, if a film like Tenet can make as much money as it did during the pandemic, mind you, because that's how much Christopher Nolan fans love Christopher Nolan and how much of an impact he can have at the global level, you cannot compare his first movie that didn't have that same level to a guy that has already been now established for many years in James Gunn. It's not even a comparison. James Gunn is not as popular as everyone thinks he is. The Guardians movies have been popular, but Suicide Squad flopped. He has his fans, but those that aren't fans are just tired of his style. No, again, that's a fair point to say for sure. I guess the main idea that I'm trying to get across, though, is that James Gunn is no Christopher Nolan, right? And I think that anyone will agree with that point. Hardwick, it seems that James Gunn is either unable or willing to depart from a specific formula. Protagonist with a man-child characteristics, ragtag group of misfits, CGI animals, needle drops, etc. Yep. Guy says here, you heard Kevin Feige said after he saw The Creator, he will make Marvel movie budget smaller and cheaper. He can say it, but until it actually happens, won't buy it. For Sci-Fi Trigger's video was on point. How many memorable movies have come out since 2010 where we can quote them? Remember the scenes with just a mention? Very few. Very, very few. I would definitely put Whiplash on that list, though. I love that movie. Caveat ties. I see what you did there. Hardwick, it felt so weird that Gunn had Corn Sweat delivering some of the Superman's lines in a high-pitched voice, but has Clark in his one scene in Glasses at Daily Planet speaking in a deep voice. Yep. General Wingster. Mortal Kombat was good. Cole Young was the character of all time. He had a family, of course. Justin C. AMC is showing My Neighbor Totoro this coming Wednesday, the 23rd, 7 p.m. showing here in New Jersey. Guessing it may be similar in your state. If that's the case, I would not be able to bring my son to it, at least. Hardwig, some of the casting in Superman makes me wonder if Gunn was trying to mitigate diversity mandates. Both Cat Grant and Eve Tessmacher are played by Latinas made up to look like white blondes. Maybe. I don't think he would think that far. Hardwick, now that I think of it, the marketing for Supergirl will probably heavily lean on Jason Momoa's Lobo to sell tickets. Yeah. But remember, that may have worked to a certain extent with the first Aquaman movie. Didn't work very well for Aquaman 2. So the quality of the film also does matter quite a bit. Forever Sci-Fi is a member saying, I'm sure Jeremy has a Nolan body pillow to cuddle up with every night. I think you're right. All right. And we've caught up with the chats. That was a lot of fun, everybody. Went a little over time tonight. So again, thank y'all for sticking with me for as long as y'all did. This was a ton of fun. Hopefully we got everything out there. 64 people watching. Woo! So what's the most that we've had in a while? Hopefully we got all that information out there for everybody to hear and to take in, right? So basically, Superman's box office is not a complete disaster. All right. There's some people that might try to run with the doom and gloom, and I think there's people that are accusing me of doing that. But I'm just trying to keep it real. The domestic for this movie is fantastic. The domestic numbers are incredible, in fact, for this film. That being said, the internationals are so bad that it's going to hold this film back by quite a bit. And the fact that we cannot say as of right now, oh, this film is a guaranteed massive hit success, profit-making movie is due to a couple things. One, we don't know what the actual budget is for this movie, despite what people might claim or might feel. We really just don't know because there's just so much mystery surrounding this public filing and then this number that they decide to put out there as, oh yeah, we only spent this much. Our tax form says this, but you don't know how much we got from tax credits, right? Okay, bud. And also, we also can see that the international, even though is not as important as domestic take because you get much more back as a studio, is still important for your global brand. It's still important for your global total and how the public will perceive your movie. Will they perceive you as a hit or as a miss? And even though the hardcore James Gunn nuts might think, oh, this is so good, things are so well, everyone loves this movie, reality isn't playing that out here. Those international audiences cannot be ignored. And if you're just going to go ahead and blame American hatred or, oh, it's Superman, that's an American property, and you can't actually back up those points because there are several movies you can use as an example to counteract that fact or counteract that supposed fact, it means you have nothing to stand on. And all that we are left with is, yeah, it's doing fine. It'll probably make some money back, but how much money? We just don't know. And is this really setting up the stage for the rest of the movies? Again, what's your next project after this? It's Peacemaker, which is not for kids. And the only thing that's keeping the domestic running right now is the fact that kids are liking it. But I've said enough now at this point in time. So thank y'all very much for watching tonight. Make sure you smash the like button. Light up the fire button. Actually, no, don't do that. I did it again twice in one night. Light up. Smash the Rumble button as well. We have another stream this week, Wednesday morning, 10 a.m. Eastern Time. So that's an hour before the Geeks and Gamers daily stream here on OMB Reviews. We do our Good Morning Asgard podcast stream for the summer. So this will be our second to last show. So please make sure to make it out there if you can. So again, that's 10 a.m. Eastern Time on Wednesday. We'll hopefully get some box office projections for Fantastic Four, some final projections. We'll see exactly where this film's going to end up. And then we're going to have a lot of fun this weekend because, yeah, does this film have a better opening than Superman? Does this film do better internationally but worse domestically? And where do these films really fall in line? And will we have any idea of where they will end up? We'll find out more this weekend. So thank y'all very much, H. Dizzle. I have enjoyed your words. Thank you, H. Dizzle. I appreciate that very much. And I'm glad that you now know I have a lot of words that I can speak when given the opportunity to. But anyway, you guys are wonderful, amazing, and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your evening, a blessed Monday. And as always, God bless. And now for a huge special shout out to all of my Chosen of Valhalla members, starting off first with my people on Patreon, Father Luca Illick and Miss Martin Muses. Check out her YouTube channel by the same name, Miss Martin Muses. Also to my Subscribestar people, Matt317. Check out his Twitch channel by the same name, Matt317. And lastly to my YouTube member, Mr. Roy. Shout out to you, good sir. And if you want your name shouted out at the end of every live stream and video, check out the top link in the video description below where you get access to that. Also, you get access to a plethora of other things. You get your name listed at the end of every live stream and video, like you saw in those names that came up before this video started. And also access to a giveaways channel that I host over on the Discord server where I give away 4Ks, Steelbooks, Blu-rays, all kinds of stuff. So check that out if you're interested in that. Also, I have an exclusive podcast that I hold at least once a month, and it's always a good time, and you get extra bonus content with that also. So if any of that sounds interesting, again, check out that top link in the video description below. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and as always, God bless.